They only see your uniform until you make them remember your name. This is the story of a black hotel maid who quietly carries the weight of a forgotten building until one fateful night she helps a mysterious billionaire home, setting off a chain of events that no one, especially her, could have predicted. As power shifts and secrets surface, she finds herself standing at the edge of something much bigger than a promotion. What happens when someone the world overlooks is finally given the keys to her own future? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments and don't blink. Tomorrow's story will challenge everything you think you know. Connie Spencer didn't plan on saving a life that night. She was just trying to finish folding towels in the basement laundry room of the Graymont Lantern Hotel, humming under her breath to keep herself awake. Midnight shifts had a way of making the world feel slower, heavier. Everything smelled like bleach, and the ancient building moaned in strange places, as if it remembered better days. But Connie had learned to stop noticing. Her hands moved on their own now, fold, stack, repeat, while her thoughts drifted to things she couldn't afford to wish for. She didn't notice the lights flickering until Corey poked his head in from the hallway. "Yo," he said, breath fogging in the cold air. "You hear something outside?" Connie looked up, annoyed. "Like what?" "Like footsteps. I think someone's out by the alley. I was on break, went to grab my coat, and—" He stopped, squinting. "You got that look again." She wiped her hands on her apron and set the last towel aside. "What look?" "The one that says, 'I'm too tired for this mess.'" "You forget where we were?" That shut him up. They both knew the hotel sat at the edge of Graymont's old district, a neighborhood that emptied out after dark, unless you counted the drunks, the junkies, or the lonely. Still, it wasn't like anyone cared what happened back there. Not really. Connie sighed. "Let's just check." They climbed the back stairwell in silence, Connie's feet dragging from the 12-hour shift. When they pushed through the rusted staff door that led to the alley, a gust of wet air slapped them in the face. Rain slicked the cracked pavement in shimmering black. A broken street lamp cast just enough light to show a figure slouched near the curb, barely moving, shoulders trembling under a heavy coat. "That's not a guest," Corey muttered. Connie had already started moving. She didn't think about it, didn't ask why, just knew that someone was there and something felt wrong. Her sneakers splashed through the gutter, and by the time she reached the figure, she could see the way his knees buckled beneath him. Then he crumpled, face first, right into the street. "Sir!" Connie dropped to her knees, grabbing his shoulders. His coat was soaked through, expensive but hanging wrong, like he didn't know how to wear it anymore. His head lolled to the side, eyes half closed, lips slack. The sharp scent of whiskey hit her nose immediately. Across the street, two shadows stirred. Connie glanced up. Two men leaned against the dark wall of a closed pawn shop, watching. Their hoodies were up, faces hard to read, but they started crossing the street with a kind of slow, ugly purpose. "Nope," she whispered. "Not tonight." Her arms slid under the stranger's, and with a grunt she hoisted him halfway upright. He wasn't unconscious. His legs twitched, feet dragging, but he was dead weight, heavy, like someone who'd given up trying. Corey reached the doorway behind her and held it open as she pulled the man through. "Girl, what are you doing?" "Helping?" she spat, breathless. "Or do you want to explain to management why we let some guy get rolled 5 feet from the lobby?" He looked past her, saw the men stop at the sidewalk, hovering now, their expressions unreadable. "Yeah, okay," Corey mumbled, stepping aside. They slipped inside, and the door clanged shut like a vault behind them. Connie lowered the man onto the bench near the laundry room. He slumped sideways, coat dripping onto the tile, his silver watch gleaming in the sickly yellow light. She checked his pulse. Steady. Slow. And then opened his coat to check for wounds. Nothing but the smell of soaked wool and expensive scotch. "His wallet fell outside," Corey said, holding it out like it was made of glass. She took it, frowning. Opened it. A black Amex driver's license. A gold-trimmed business card that looked like it belonged in a movie, not a wallet. Richard Langston, she read. Corey leaned in. Langston. Wait. Langston Tech? Like the billionaire dude that disappeared? She stared at the card again, then at the man slumped in front of her. His hair was wet and curling at the edges, his cheeks unshaven. Still, there was something clean beneath the dishevelment, a face that belonged in boardrooms, not alleys. Connie stood up fast. Get the ID scanned. Now. We don't have time for you to argue. Corey scrambled off, phone in hand, and she crouched beside the man again. He was mumbling, low and slurred. She leaned in. Hey, she whispered. You with me? His lips moved. Don't forget. You're the kind that matters. She froze. It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them, like he believed them, like it was the only thing keeping him from slipping under. 15 minutes later, the cab arrived. Connie wrapped a dry towel around the man's shoulders and guided him out front, ignoring the water seeping into her sneakers. The driver opened the door halfway, blinking in confusion. He's out of it, she explained, reaching into her own wallet. She pulled out a 50 and folded it tight, pushing it into the driver's hand. Don't charge him, just get him home. He's not going to fight you. The cabbie raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Connie fastened the seatbelt across Richard's chest as he leaned heavily against her, then stepped back and closed the door. The cab rolled away into the mist, its red taillights glowing like fading embers. Connie stood still. Rain trickled off the hotel awning. The clock inside the front desk read 3:52 a.m. Just another night at the Greymont Lantern. Except it didn't feel like it. She walked slowly back to the staff locker, peeling off her soaked hoodie, heart still thudding from the adrenaline. Something had shifted, not outside, but inside her. Like a match had been struck in a dark room that she didn't even realize was hers. And in that silence, alone in the dim hallway, she whispered to no one. Telling, what the hell did I just do? The hotel groaned as if answering her, and somewhere out there the storm began to break. Corey was the first to speak the next morning. He held out his phone like it was glowing with secrets. That was him. I ran the ID through 3 different databases just to be sure. Connie didn't look up from where she was kneeling by the supply closet, reorganizing a box of toiletries no one ever used. I know. You know? Corey blinked. Like, you knew last night and just decided to not scream it in my face? I had a hunch, she said, her voice low. When you've cleaned as many rooms as I have, you learn to spot the difference between drunk and broken. Corey tilted his head, curious, and this one was both. He leaned against the doorframe. So what now? You just saved a billionaire's life, Connie. That's, like, big. That's news big. You could call a paper? TMZ? I don't know. People get famous for less. She turned and gave him a look, the kind that stopped conversations mid-sentence. I'm not trying to get famous. He held up his hands. All right. Just saying. Feels like something's about to happen. Stuff like this doesn't just disappear. That was the part that gnawed at her. It didn't feel like something she could brush off. Not just because of who he was, but how it felt to help him. The weight of him leaning against her, like he trusted her without even knowing her name. The way he looked in that moment like someone trying to disappear from the inside out. It stuck with her. And now that she had a name to put to the man, the feeling hadn't gone away. If anything, it had deepened. She pushed the box aside and stood, brushing dust from her jeans. I need a mop. Some kid spilled cranberry juice all over the 3rd-floor hallway. Corey was still staring at her, as if waiting for her to say something else. But she didn't. Upstairs, the hallway was quiet. The third floor always smelled faintly of mildew and leftover cologne, a weird combination that somehow defined the Graymont Lantern. Built in 1928, the hotel was once a crown jewel of the city, a place where celebrities used to sip champagne under crystal chandeliers. Now the chandeliers flickered, and the wallpaper peeled, and the only thing sparkling was the soda machine down the hall. Connie liked it here in a strange way. The building had character. It creaked and sighed like it had stories to tell, like her. She moved methodically, cleaning up the spill. The juice had dried into a sticky puddle under the vending machine, which meant she had to squat down, head practically in the machine's mouth, and scrub like hell to get it off the floor. Her arms ached by the time she was done. She stood slowly, glancing around, and froze when she saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. A man in a tailored gray coat. Watching her, her heart jumped. Her first thought was, he came back. But it wasn't Richard. This man was thinner, younger, maybe early 30s, clean-shaven with slicked-back hair and an expensive briefcase tucked under one arm. He noticed her staring and walked over with that stiff, polite confidence rich people always had. "Excuse me," he said, smiling like someone who didn't know how to do it naturally. "I'm looking for the manager." Connie straightened. "We don't really have one on site overnight. Is there something I can help you with?" He tilted his head as if sizing her up. "I was told this hotel had an incident last night." Her stomach tightened. What kind of incident? He pulled out a business card and held it between two fingers. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Langston." Now her heart really started pounding. The card was sleek, black, embossed with gold. Crowley and Price, LLP. A firm she'd only ever heard about on the news. The kind that dealt with mergers, hostile takeovers, and people with money in places Connie couldn't spell. The man continued, clearly enjoying the effect his card had. "Mr. Langston was assisted here, is that correct?" She nodded slowly. "He was found outside. Looked like he'd been drinking. We helped him get home." The man made a small hum of approval. "Mr. Langston wanted to express his thanks personally. He's still recovering. But he wanted me to check in. May I ask your name?" She hesitated. "Connie Spencer." He scribbled something in a little notepad he pulled from his coat. "And you were the one who found him." She gave a slight nod, her shoulders tightening with each word. "Well, Miss Spencer, Mr. Langston is deeply grateful. You likely prevented a situation that could have turned ugly." He folded the notebook and tucked it away. His tone shifted, warmer now, like he was reading off a script he'd just memorized. He also wanted to make sure no one here would disclose his presence. You understand, of course. Media attention, stockholders, investors. He's a public figure. A quiet recovery benefits everyone. "I'm not looking to make trouble," Connie said quietly. "I believe you." He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Still, I'll be leaving this with the front desk. A small thank you." She didn't ask what it was. She didn't want to know. The man gave a tight nod and turned away, his shoes clicking softly down the hall. By the time she got back downstairs, the envelope was already on the counter. Corey was practically bouncing. "He said it's for you." She opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note, short and neat. "For the night you didn't walk away. Thank you. R.L." And behind it, Connie's breath caught. A check. $5,000. She stared at it like it might catch fire. Corey leaned over her shoulder. "Holy Connie, that's a car. That's 2 months of rent. That's your sister's school books." She said nothing, just stared at the check, hands shaking, chest tight. She'd expected nothing, maybe a thank you, maybe silence. But not this. Not something that felt so personal from someone so distant. She didn't say it out loud, but the thought was there, sitting in her mind like a match ready to be struck. Why would a man like Richard Langston care this much about being saved? And what kind of man leaves a check this size without wanting something back? As she tucked the envelope away, Connie couldn't help but glance at the front doors, half expecting him to walk in again. But they stayed closed, silent as ever. For now. By the next morning, Connie's world hadn't changed, but her heartbeat had. It fluttered in her chest like something nervous and new, beating just a little faster as she moved through the halls of the Greymont Lantern, mop in one hand, her thoughts a million miles away. No one at the hotel noticed anything different. Not Corey, not the bellhop who always showed up late, not even Miss Ada from housekeeping, who noticed everything except her own missing teeth. But Connie felt it, that invisible line in her life, before the man in the alley and after. She'd tucked the check into the Bible in her nightstand drawer, like a secret she wasn't ready to look at again. $5,000 for helping a drunk man. She'd been helping people for years and had never gotten anything but sore feet and short paychecks. She wasn't ungrateful, she just didn't know what it meant. Yet. Because rich men didn't thank hotel maids. Not unless they wanted something. And this one had vanished just as quickly as he came, leaving his lawyer to do the talking, and a note, signed only with initials. Ardale. She whispered them under her breath while cleaning room 407, wiping the same nightstand 3 times, just so she could think. R.L., she said again, this time in the mirror. Richard Langston. The name felt like fiction. She'd only ever seen it on news segments or magazine covers, the kind you flip through while waiting in line at the grocery store, never once thinking you'd meet the man behind the suit. Langston Tech was everywhere. Smart homes, city grid software, AI development. One of the few tech billionaires who actually seemed to care where his money went. And now, somehow, Connie had carried him through a hotel kitchen like a busted-down shopping cart. The image made her snort under her breath. Still, something about it didn't sit right. Why had he been there, in that part of town, alone, drunk, in the rain? And why had he looked at her like that when he slurred those words? You're the kind that matters. It wasn't just drunken rambling. She'd seen too many blackout drunks in this place. He meant that. Said it like it was important, like it was something he needed to say before he couldn't say anything at all. She shook her head and pushed her cart down the hall. By the time she got back to the laundry room, Corey was already leaning against the door, phone in hand. I found him, he said, smugly. Who? She asked, even though she knew. He held out the screen, like it was gospel. Richard Langston, Forbes profile, updated last year before he disappeared. She squinted. The man in the photo was sharp-jawed, clean-cut, wearing a slate suit that probably cost more than her rent, smiling politely, a background blur of stock tickers and logos behind him. That's him, she said softly. I told you, rich as sin. Disappeared from public life last winter. Some think he's in rehab. Others say he's having a breakdown. Connie looked at the picture a moment longer, then turned away. Why do you care so much? Corey shrugged. Because it's not every day a billionaire face plants in front of your job and then writes you a check. I mean, are you going to cash it? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? That's $5,000. I know what it is. Her voice was sharp enough to quiet him. For once, Corey didn't joke. He just slipped his phone back into his pocket. Do you think he's coming back? She didn't answer, because she didn't know, because part of her hoped not, and part of her hoped too much. Later that night, she found herself cleaning the front lobby windows. She'd already done it earlier that day, but the fingerprints returned like ghosts. Outside, the sky was darkening again. No rain this time, just the low hum of traffic and the occasional siren in the distance. The hotel lobby was quiet. Two guests sat on opposite ends of the room, scrolling through their phones. A businessman who had checked in an hour ago, and a woman with headphones buried deep in a novel. The front desk was empty. Corey had gone to get snacks. The heater made a soft groan behind the reception counter, and then the door chimed. Connie didn't turn right away, just wiped one more streak, kept her face down, focused. "Excuse me," came a familiar voice. "I think I left something here last week." She turned. He was standing there, real, solid, and somehow less put together than before. Richard Langston. No suit this time, just a charcoal coat, unbuttoned, and jeans that looked expensive in their simplicity. His hair was combed, but not perfect. His face was tired, like someone who hadn't slept well but was trying to pretend otherwise. She froze. "Mr. Langston." He smiled, soft and hesitant. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me. I dragged you off a sidewalk and put you in a cab. Hard to forget." He chuckled under his breath. "I suppose that's fair." She stepped away from the window, uncertain. He wasn't drunk now. His eyes were clear, sharp, even. He was looking at her the way people usually looked at paintings, like he was trying to figure out if he saw what he thought he saw. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, "in person." "You already did." He tilted his head. "Did I?" "Your assistant or lawyer or whoever left a check." "Elaine." He nodded. "She's a partner at my firm, and I told her to leave something, but I still felt like I owed you more." "Oh, you don't owe me anything." "That's not how I see it." She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to stand in front of a man who'd spent more money on a thank you than she'd made in 3 months. He stepped closer, slowly, cautiously. "Look, I've been off the map. Things happened. I got tired of the world, and the world got tired of me. I didn't plan to end up here that night, but I remember it, not all of it. But you, I remember." She stayed quiet. "You didn't ask who I was," he continued. "You didn't pull out your phone or call a tabloid. You didn't even take my wallet." "I didn't need to." He smiled again. This time, it reached his eyes. "It meant what I said, you know, about the kind that matters." She shifted on her feet. "That was just something you said when you were—" "No," he cut in gently. "That was something I remembered, even when I couldn't remember my own damn name." The words sat between them, heavy. He glanced around the lobby, then back at her. "Can I buy you coffee sometime? Or lunch? I don't know the rules, but I'd like to know more about the person who found me." Her instinct said no, it was safer that way. But then she remembered how his body had slumped against her shoulder, how fragile he'd seemed, despite the weight of his wallet, his name, his legacy. And somehow her mouth moved before she could stop it. Lunch might be okay. His face lit up. Not too much, just enough to prove he wasn't faking it. "I'll call the hotel," he said. "I'll figure it out." He turned to leave, then paused. "Thank you again, Connie." And just like that, he was gone. But this time, something told her he wouldn't be disappearing for long. It was Friday when the phone call came. Connie was off shift, lounging in her sister's hand-me-down hoodie, hair tied up in a way that told the world she had no plans of being seen. She had a cup of tea in one hand, her phone in the other, and she was halfway through a rerun of a cooking show she didn't even like when the screen lit up with a number she didn't recognize. She stared at it for a second, then, out of instinct, swiped to answer. "Hello, Miss Spencer." The voice on the other end was calm, professional, female. "This is Marcia from Violet and Thorn. Mr. Langston requested a reservation for lunch today and asked that I extend the invitation to you. He said you'd know what it was about." Connie blinked. Violet and Thorn wasn't a regular restaurant. It was one of those places that didn't have a menu online. You didn't walk in, you were sent for. Okay, what time?" 1:15. He'll have a car waiting at your address. She glanced at the clock. It was 11:43. I didn't agree to this, she said, not exactly angry, just unsure. Of course, the woman said smoothly. Would you like me to cancel? Connie opened her mouth, then closed it. She should cancel. She didn't have the right clothes. She didn't belong in that kind of place. But she also remembered the way he'd looked at her in the lobby, like he wasn't done saying what needed to be said. No, she said. Don't cancel. When the call ended, Connie sat frozen for a moment, mug growing cold in her hand. And then she was up, digging through her closet like it might suddenly produce something fancier than work polos and jeans. She found a soft maroon blouse she'd only worn once to a job interview that led nowhere, and a pair of black slacks that almost fit if she didn't breathe too hard. She ran a comb through her curls, dabbed on a bit of lip gloss, and stared at her reflection like she was trying to convince herself this wasn't a mistake. The car was waiting by the curb at exactly 12:45. It was black, shiny, the kind of shiny that meant someone cleaned it even when it didn't need cleaning. The driver stepped out and opened the back door without saying a word. Connie hesitated, one foot on the sidewalk, one still at the edge of her apartment steps. She could go back inside, pretend she never answered the phone, pretend this was all some weird side story in someone else's life. But she took a breath, exhaled, and stepped into the car. The interior smelled like leather and cedarwood. Quiet jazz played through hidden speakers. The driver didn't speak as they pulled off, the city passing by like a dream behind tinted windows. Connie sat back, hands clasped in her lap. She didn't know what she expected. Maybe Richard would apologize again. Maybe he'd offer her a job or try to thank her in some public way that would make her uncomfortable. Maybe this was just lunch, or maybe it wasn't. By the time they arrived, her stomach was tight. Violet and Thorne sat tucked into a narrow corner of the city's west side, hidden behind ivy-covered walls and a set of heavy oak doors. It looked like a library for rich people, the kind of place where everything was whispered and nothing had a price tag. A host in a black vest greeted her at the entrance like he'd known her name for years. This way, Miss Spencer. He led her past linen-covered tables and hushed voices, through a narrow hallway to a secluded back room. There, Richard Langston stood near a tall window, hands in his pockets, looking out at a tiny, sculpted garden. He turned as she entered, smiling lightly. You came. You sent a car. I wasn't sure you'd get in. She raised an eyebrow. You know, you could have just texted, right? His smile deepened. I like dramatic gestures. She sat at the table across from him, trying not to fidget. The menu was a single page, no prices. She didn't recognize half the words. Don't worry, he said, noticing. I already ordered for both of us. Bald, she said. Lazy, he replied, but the chef's better at this than either of us. For a moment, the silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just careful, like neither of them knew what to do with the fact that they were here, in this place, sharing something that didn't fit into either of their lives neatly. He leaned forward slightly. You okay? She nodded. Just processing. I don't blame you. It's been a strange week. Strange is one word. Their food arrived, something with roasted duck and unfamiliar greens. She tried not to look as out of place as she felt. You said you wanted to know more about me, she said, after a few bites. I do, he said, but not if you don't want to tell me. She tilted her head. Why? Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only tell me what they think I want to hear. She wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she nodded, slow. I've worked at the Greymont Lantern for 5 years. I clean rooms, fold sheets, mop floors. Before that, I worked at a daycare. Before that, a diner. Never finished college. Couldn't afford it. My mom's in Michigan. My dad's wherever he is. My little sister's in nursing school. I send her what I can. Richard listened without interrupting. "Some nights, I go home so tired I forget who I am," she added. "But that night, when I saw you on the street, I didn't think, I just moved." He was quiet for a moment. "That's probably what saved me," she shrugged. "Or maybe you were just lucky." "No," he said, meeting her eyes. "I wasn't." The words landed heavier than she expected. He shifted in his seat, eyes drifting toward the garden again. "I was at a low point, Connie. Not because of the drinking or the storm, but because I felt like everything I'd built was slipping out from under me. The company, my name, the pressure. It all got too loud. And nobody noticed until you did." "I wasn't trying to notice," she said. "Exactly. That's what made it real." She looked down at her plate, appetite fading. "Why did you really bring me here?" He leaned back, thoughtful. "I guess because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be helped without being judged. I wanted to see if you were still as honest as you seemed that night. And maybe I wanted to ask if you'd let me return the favor." Her head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I don't know yet," he said. "But I've got a feeling this isn't the last time we'll be sitting across from each other." She didn't know what that meant, not really, but for once the uncertainty didn't scare her. She picked up her fork, took another bite of food she still didn't recognize, and let herself smile. Just a little. The world didn't change after lunch. Not really. Graymont still smelled like oil and damp brick, the buses still groaned past on their usual routes, and Connie still returned to her small apartment with the leaky kitchen faucet and the mismatched thrift store chairs. But inside her something felt different. Something had shifted, as quietly and surely as the seasons. She sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at her shoes, still dusty from the walk up her building's crumbling staircase. Her mind kept replaying the way Richard Langston had looked across the table at her. Like she wasn't someone he pitied. Like she was someone who mattered. She didn't trust it. Not entirely. But it wasn't pity in his voice. Not in his eyes either. That much she could say for sure. She picked up the envelope again, the one with the check. It still felt too heavy in her hands, too sharp at the edges. She hadn't cashed it yet. She hadn't even decided if she would. It felt like a line. Once she crossed it, something would be different. Maybe forever. She tucked it back inside her nightstand drawer and let out a long breath. At the Graymont Lantern, nothing had changed. Not the squeaky elevator. Not the front doors with the chipped gold trim. Not the dust that gathered along the corners of the lobby ceiling no matter how many times they'd cleaned it. But everyone looked at her a little differently now. Corey noticed first. He caught her walking in early the next day, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Okay," he said, folding his arms dramatically. "You've got a glow." "Have a what?" "A glow, like someone just dropped $5,000 on you and then took you to lunch at a place that serves food you can't pronounce." Emma wore a borrowed blouse and sat next to a hedge shaped like a swan, she muttered, pushing past him. "That's a rich man thing," Corey called after her. "Hedge animals. You just got courted by a hedge." She shot him a glare that shut him up, temporarily. Still the attention lingered, little glances from staff who didn't usually speak to her. The bellhop, who never used her name, now said Miss Spencer, like it belonged in cursive on a nameplate. Even Miss Ada gave her a sideways look during their shift change, mumbling something about moving up, with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Connie didn't say anything, didn't tell anyone about the conversation they'd had at lunch, or how Richard had made her feel seen in a way she wasn't used to. It was private, and it was hers. The quiet that followed felt strange, like something waiting behind a door. She found herself standing by the front desk more often, eyes flicking toward the entrance when the chime rang. Part of her hated it, hated how hopeful she felt, how her stomach flipped each time it was just another couple with too much luggage or a man asking for a cab. Richard hadn't called, hadn't written. No driver had shown up, just silence. It should have been a relief. She was back to mopping, folding, scrubbing, same as always. But now there was something under her skin, a sense that something had been offered and left unspoken. Late one night, when the front desk was empty and the coffee machine had finished its last pitiful gurgle, she stepped outside for air. The alley behind the hotel was damp, scattered with cigarette butts and the faint smell of fryer grease from the diner 2 blocks down. She leaned against the brick wall and looked up. Greymont's skyline wasn't impressive. Just old buildings stacked beside new ones, all of them reaching but never quite touching the stars. A city in mid-sentence, never really finished. "Do you ever get the feeling something's coming?" a voice asked beside her. She turned. Corey stood a few feet away, sipping from a soda can like he hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. "You always talk like that, or is it just on my smoke breaks?" she muttered. He shrugged. "It's the caffeine. Makes me philosophical." She gave a small laugh, but he didn't smile. "Seriously," he said. "That guy, Langston, what's he want from you?" She looked away. "I don't know." "You think he's real about all this?" "I don't know that." He kicked at a piece of gravel. "Just be careful. Some people act generous when they're trying to feel better about themselves. Doesn't mean they're thinking about what happens to you when they leave." She didn't answer right away. Then, "He didn't treat me like a favor. Not once." Corey studied her for a second. "Yeah, well, let's hope he stays that way." The next morning came like any other. Until it didn't. Connie was restocking towels on the second floor when she saw a woman in a navy suit standing at the front desk. Sleek hair. Clipboard. A face that said she knew the value of every second you wasted. She didn't belong here. Corey gave Connie a wide-eyed look as she approached. "This is Miss Crowley," he said under his breath. "I know who she is," Connie interrupted, already recognizing the name. Elaine Crowley turned toward her, lips pressed in a polite line. "Mrs. Spencer, good morning." "Hi," Connie said cautiously. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Just folding towels." Elaine gave a single nod. "Mr. Langston asked me to deliver something to you personally, and to say that he apologizes for the delay." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. It looked official. Connie hesitated, then took it. "What is it?" Elaine glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Langston has instructed us to begin the process of transferring partial holdings in a private trust. He's naming you as a beneficiary. It's early paperwork, nothing binding yet, but it's a signal of intent." Connie blinked. "What kind of intent?" Elaine tilted her head slightly, something kind flashing in her eyes. "Let's just say he's been thinking about legacy." Connie opened the envelope slowly, scanning the top of the document. Legal jargon, pages and pages of it, her name printed at the top. She felt her knees go weak and reached for the edge of the counter. This can't be." "It's not final," Elaine said gently. "Just the beginning. But if you're willing to explore it, we'd like to schedule a conversation." Connie looked up, still stunned. Why would he do this? Elaine gave a faint smile. "Sometimes, when you've lost yourself, the only way back is to do something that matters. You helped him remember that." She left without another word. Connie stood at the front desk, heart pounding, document trembling in her hands. And behind her, the Greymont lantern blinked under its flickering lights, as if unsure whether it was still the same building it had always been. The bell above the entrance gave a sharp chime. Connie didn't look up right away. She was at the bar, folding cocktail napkins into little triangles, a habit she'd picked up during slow shifts when there was nothing else to do. Most of the staff thought it was pointless. Guests didn't care what shape the napkins were in. but she liked the repetition. Folding gave her hands something to do when her thoughts refused to stay quiet. Behind her, footsteps crossed the lobby floor, steady, deliberate. Not the lazy shuffle of someone looking for an elevator or the hurried click of a late checkout. She knew the walk before she turned. Richard Langston stood in the doorway, sunlight flaring at his back. He wore a pale blue dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her car. But his expression was soft, almost sheepish, like he wasn't sure if he should be here. She stood slowly. "I was beginning to think you ghosted me," she said. He smiled, faint but real. "I had a meeting out of state. I came back this morning and told the driver to head straight here. No lunch reservation this time?" He gestured toward the bar. "I was hoping you'd let me buy you coffee instead." She raised an eyebrow. "You think I'd just sit here waiting for surprise billionaires?" "No," he said. "But I was hoping I got lucky again." She sighed, waved at Corey through the office window. "Cover the desk." Corey gave her a salute that could have meant anything. Approval, curiosity, or sheer chaos. Then disappeared back into the break room. She walked around the bar and gestured to a table near the tall front windows where the light fell soft across the worn tile floor. Richard followed, pulling out a chair for her before sitting down himself. They sat for a few seconds in silence. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his coat and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it on the table between them without saying anything. "What's this?" she asked. "Something you should read." Connie opened it carefully. Inside was a folded letter on heavyweight stationery. Neat handwriting in dark ink, not typed. Personal. She read the first line and blinked. "To whom it may concern, I, Richard Langston, hereby propose the transfer of operational control of the Greymont Lantern Hotel to Connie Spencer." She stopped reading, looked up. "What is this?" "It's a proposal," he said. "And a test." "A test of what?" "To see what you'll do if someone gives you the chance to build something instead of clean up after everyone else's mess." Her mouth opened, then closed. "I don't want a handout," she said slowly. "This isn't that. The hotel's in trouble, deep trouble. The owner's considering selling it to a development firm that plans to gut it and turn it into luxury condos. You'd get new wallpaper, sure, but everyone else loses their job." Connie sat back, stunned. "Do you know all this?" "Because I bought a 21% share from one of the silent partners last week." Her eyes widened. "You what?" "I have people who look at numbers all day. I ask them to dig into this place, how it runs, who owns what. Turns out this hotel's split between 5 people. 4 want to hold, 1 wanted out, so I bought in." She stared at him, trying to make sense of it. "Why would you do that?" "Because someone who works here saved me," he said. "And because she's the only reason this place still feels human." "You don't know that." "I do." They sat in silence again, tension curling like smoke between them. "You think I can run a hotel?" she finally asked. "I think you already do," he said. "Half the staff listens to you. Corey practically worships you. You keep the building running when everyone else checks out early. You care. Caring doesn't pay for renovations. Doesn't cover payroll." "No, but a board vote might. The owner, Marla Travers, she's vulnerable right now. She's tired. She's looking for a reason to step back. If we present a plan with community impact and local hires, we can sway the board. But only if the face of that plan is someone the staff trusts." She rubbed her temples, overwhelmed. "This is insane." "It's an opportunity," he said gently, "and it's yours if you want it." The door chimed again, but neither of them looked. The world had narrowed to the table between them, the envelope, and the impossible weight of what it offered. "Mean me?" she asked. He leaned forward. "Because I was dying on a sidewalk, and you didn't walk past me." You didn't run. You didn't pull out your phone and film it. You pulled me off the ground and got me home. That kind of person shouldn't be stuck cleaning up after people who had left her in the rain." She swallowed hard. "You don't even know if I'm smart enough to do this. I know you're brave enough to try." The room felt too bright, the windows too clear. Connie folded the letter again, her hands shaking just slightly. She didn't answer right away, didn't know how to. Everything felt like it was spinning too fast, like the floor might fall out if she stood too suddenly. "What do I have to do?" she asked at last. His smile returned, relieved this time. "Meet me on Tuesday. I'll introduce you to the other shareholders. We'll pitch the plan together. You won't be alone." She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. After he left, the lobby felt hollow again. Quieter than usual. The only sound was the hum of the vending machine and the old air unit grumbling in the corner. Corey poked his head out of the break room. "Was that what I think it was?" "I don't know what you think it was," Connie muttered, still staring at the folded envelope. He walked over, read the label, and gave a low whistle. "Girl." She finally looked up. "Yeah? I think you're about to be a problem." She couldn't help the laugh that broke loose, a shaky, breathless laugh that tasted like fear and freedom. "Maybe I am." She tucked the letter into her apron pocket, feeling it press against her like a dare. Maybe the world hadn't changed. But she had. Connie barely slept the night before the meeting. She'd spent hours pacing her living room, rehearsing what she might say, cycling through possible questions and answers, only to forget them all 5 minutes later. No outfit she owned felt right. Everything was either too casual, too stiff, or just too worn out. In the end, she chose the same maroon blouse she'd worn to lunch with Richard, paired with the nicest pair of slacks she had, and a quiet, unpolished confidence that she prayed would carry her through the day. The meeting wasn't at the Greymont Lantern. It was in a high-rise downtown, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking streets she rarely walked. She arrived 10 minutes early, clutching a borrowed leather folder with a copy of the proposal Richard had given her. The receptionist barely looked up when she gave her name, just pointed her toward the elevator with a polite, distracted smile. On the ride up, Connie kept her gaze fixed on the floor numbers lighting up one by one. Her palms were sweating, her breath felt tight in her chest. This wasn't her world, these buildings, these polished hallways, these quiet, powerful people who made decisions that moved cities. When the doors opened, Richard was waiting for her in the hallway. "Hey," he said, his voice calm and grounding. "You made it." "Don't look so surprised," she muttered. "I'm not. I'm impressed." She gave him a quick, nervous smile, and they walked in together. The boardroom was smaller than she expected, sleek, cold. A long, dark wood table dominated the room, surrounded by 5 chairs already occupied by people in tailored suits and expensive shoes. At the head sat a woman with sharp cheekbones, ice-white hair pinned back, and a frown that looked permanent. Marla Travers. Richard leaned over and whispered, "Just breathe." Connie nodded and took a seat beside him. Marla spoke first. "So, this is her." Her voice was sharp, clipped. She didn't bother disguising her tone. "Yes," Richard said. "This is Connie Spencer. She's been part of the Lantern's team for 5 years." Marla folded her hands, eyes narrowing. "A maid." Connie felt the words slap her across the face, soft but brutal. She straightened her shoulders, kept her hands in her lap. "I prefer staff," she said calmly. "We all keep that place standing, whether we have a title or not." One of the other board members, an older man with a bald head and glasses, smiled faintly. Another, a younger woman in navy, scribbled something in her notebook. Marla didn't react. She looked at Richard. "Tell me again why we're entertaining this fairy tale?" "Because the Lantern is failing," Richard said flatly, "and the people running it aren't fixing it. We've maintained profits. Barely, and only because you've been bleeding the place dry with short-term cost cuts. No community events, no outreach, no renovations, no story. It's just a building now, not a place people want to stay. Marla raised an eyebrow. And you think she's the solution? I think she's the start of one. Connie took a deep breath and opened her folder. I've been working at that hotel long enough to know what it needs. It's not just new wallpaper or fancy towels. It needs heart. Right now we serve cheap coffee and give people a bed, but we could be more than that. A place for artists, traveling nurses, new families, a place that tells the story of the neighborhood, not erases it. She passed copies of the proposal down the table, page by page. It's a plan, she continued. It's not perfect, but it's real, and I'm willing to put in the work, if I'm given the chance. The room was quiet as the board skimmed the papers. Marla didn't look down. She stared at Connie instead. You think because you pulled a man out of the gutter, that qualifies you to run a business? Connie met her gaze. No. I think what qualifies me is that I'd never stop showing up for that place, even when the roof leaked, even when we were short-staffed, even when no one upstairs seemed to care what was happening on the ground floor. Marla's mouth tightened. Richard, she said, voice sharp, this is a PR stunt. You feel guilty about something? Fine, write a book. But don't dismantle the board. I'm not dismantling anything, he said, calm but firm. I am offering a better option than collapse. We are not collapsing, Marla snapped. You're not growing, he countered, and growth is the only thing that saves places like the Lantern. There was a long pause. Then one of the board members spoke up. What's the financial plan? Connie swallowed. We start small. Grant applications for historic preservation, partnerships with local businesses, coffee shops, community theaters, vendors who want visibility. We tap into the nostalgia of the place, invite stories, host events, weddings, open mics. Stuff that makes the hotel feel like a home, not just a holding space. And who leads all this? I do, she said, louder than she expected. With help. I'm not pretending I know everything, but I know people. I know how to keep a building alive, and I have ideas, real ones. The younger woman at the table smiled for the first time. Marla sat back in her chair. You've got guts, she said coldly. But guts don't pay the bills. No, Connie agreed. But they're the reason we show up to do the work, and without that, there's nothing left. The meeting lasted another 20 minutes. Questions, concerns, numbers that made Connie's head spin. But she answered what she could and admitted what she didn't know. Richard filled in the gaps. Together they made the case. When it was over, the board said they'd vote next week. As the room emptied, Marla stayed seated. Connie walked over, hesitating. Can I ask you something? Can I ask you something? Marla gave a slight nod. Why are you fighting this so hard? Marla's eyes didn't soften. Because I've seen what happens when you let sentiment get in the way of business. You think saving a building saves a legacy. But legacies fade. Numbers don't. Connie stood a little straighter. Maybe, but sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. Marla stood, gathering her briefcase. Good luck, Miss Spencer. You're gonna need it. Then she swept out, heels clicking against the floor like a warning shot. Richard appeared beside her, watching Marla disappear through the glass doors. You handled that better than I would have. I didn't handle anything, Connie said. She hates me. She doesn't hate you. She hates being reminded that the world's moving on without her. He smiled, slow and proud. You were incredible in there. She exhaled, finally letting her shoulders drop. I was terrified. Good. That means you care. They stepped into the elevator together, and as the doors closed, Connie looked at her reflection in the metal wall. She didn't look different. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, She was starting to become someone who could be. The day of the vote arrived like any other Thursday. Quiet, gray, and ordinary on the surface. But Connie couldn't breathe right. She'd woken up at 5, 2 hours before her alarm, and sat at the edge of her bed for a full 10 minutes before moving. Her mind looped through every moment of the board meeting, every question, every doubt Marla had carved into the room. It didn't matter how many people had nodded in agreement. One voice like hers could drown everything out. Still, she got dressed. Same slacks, same maroon blouse, ironed carefully, same worn flats with a tiny scratch on the left toe that wouldn't buff out no matter what she tried. She did her hair slowly, carefully pinning the flyaways that never listened. And when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see a maid. Not anymore. She saw someone waiting to hear if her life was going to change forever. Corey was already at the hotel when she arrived, pacing behind the front desk like he was in a police lineup. There she is, he whispered when he saw her. I've been on high alert. I checked the news, I checked my email. I even checked the rich people gossip blogs. Nothing. Connie smiled faintly, but her stomach twisted tighter. No one's going to report on this, she said, stepping behind the desk. It's too small. It's not small to me. Or me. They sat in silence for a moment. The phone rang once, and Corey answered with his usual chirpy tone before transferring the call. A guest wandered down, asking about late checkout. Then everything fell still again. At exactly 10:27, her phone vibrated. One message. From Richard. Vote was cast. Check your email in 5 minutes. Her chest stopped moving. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out her tablet from behind the desk and opened the Gmail app. The minutes crawled. Corey hovered beside her, practically breathing down her neck. When the email appeared, the subject line read, Board Vote Results Greymont Lantern Redevelop. She clicked. The first few lines were formal, a thank you for presenting, a recap of the meeting. By majority vote 3-2, the proposal has been approved for initial pilot implementation. Corey gasped so loudly a guest walking past actually flinched. You did it, he whispered, mouth open. You freaking did it. Connie stared at the screen, eyes wide. But I don't... Wait, this means yes? This means yes, Richard's voice said behind her. She turned, startled. He stood just inside the lobby, wearing the same soft smile he always did when he knew something she didn't. They voted in favor of you, in favor of the plan. Her voice cracked, and she looked down, blinking fast. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. It's not final file, not yet. There's a review period. We have to hit benchmarks. But you've got the green light to run it, to lead it. The weight of those words sat heavy on her chest. She wasn't just getting a promotion. She wasn't stepping into a new role. She was rebuilding the very thing she used to clean up after. Rewriting the script. Connie Spencer, Corey said, almost reverently. Boss lady. She covered her mouth with her hand, the emotion rising fast. I don't even know where to start, she whispered. You already started, Richard said. The night you didn't walk away. That afternoon, the hotel looked different. Not in its walls or its paint, but in the way the staff moved. Word had spread fast. Corey probably helped, whispering updates in the break room and texting anyone who wasn't on shift. Even Ms. Ada seemed to walk taller, her usual grumbles softened at the edges. Guests who passed through the lobby that day smiled at Connie in a new way, like they were seeing her for the first time. The ownership documents wouldn't be official for another few weeks, legal timelines, title changes, and licensing, but the board had given her authority to act as interim manager immediately. That meant hiring, budgeting, scheduling, decision-making. It also meant risk. If she failed, she wouldn't just lose a title. She could lose everything she was trying to protect. That night, she sat in the empty guest lounge with a stack of notebooks, a laptop, and a half-eaten bag of vending machine pretzels. Richard joined her sometime around 9, holding 2 coffees from the cafe around the corner. "You look like you're building a space shuttle," he said, setting the drinks down. "I'm making a spreadsheet," she muttered. "I don't know what I'm doing." He smiled and slid into the seat across from her. "That's the point," he said. "You're building something that didn't exist yesterday." She stared at the rows of numbers on the screen. "I've got 2 boilers that are 30 years old, 1 elevator that's haunted, and a guest suite where the ceiling peels if someone showers too long. And we've got 12 months to turn a crumbling hotel into a community anchor before Marla pushes the board to shut us down." He sipped his coffee. "Then we make it count." She looked up at him, the weight of everything finally settling. Her voice softened. "I lied." "Are you still here, Richard? You voted. You could have walked away." "I told you," he said. "I lost a lot before I ended up in that alley. Money, sure, but more than that, I lost who I was." "And this place helped you find it again?" "No, you did." She felt the tears threaten again, but blinked them back. She didn't have time to cry, not now, not when there were budgets to manage and staff to inspire and decades of silence to unlearn. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small key. "What's that?" "Room 401, he said. "It's been vacant for a year. Needs repairs, but it's got a view. It's yours now. Office space, or somewhere to think." She took the key slowly. "Thank you," she said. "No," he replied. "Thank you for showing me what it means to build something that matters." Later that night, after the hotel had gone quiet and the city outside had dulled to its softest hum, Connie stood outside room 401. The hallway was dim. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and old wood. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was dusty, unused, but the bones were good. Hardwood floors, wide windows, a balcony that overlooked the street. The bed was stripped bare, the furniture minimal. She walked to the window and looked out. Raymond blinked below her, honest and flawed and alive. She thought about everything it had taken to get here. Every mop bucket, every overtime shift, every time she'd bitten her tongue to keep the peace. Every look that told her she wasn't seen. Every doubt, every dream. And now here she stood, not dreaming, deciding. She placed the key on the window ledge and whispered to the empty room. "Let's begin." The first thing to go was the wallpaper. It had curled like tired fingers along the baseboards for years, yellowing at the edges, brittle to the touch. Guests complained about it more than anything else. It smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette smoke from a time when people still smoked indoors without shame. Connie made the call on her second day as acting manager. Rip it all down. She didn't wait for a contractor. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and did it herself. By noon, Corey and 2 of the kitchen staff had joined her, blasting music from a Bluetooth speaker and laughing every time a chunk came off in a single satisfying sheet. By evening, 4 rooms looked like bare bones. Exposed drywall, scarred paint, the ghosts of old designs faintly visible in the light. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. And that, Connie thought, was the point. Not everything about leadership came naturally. She didn't like meetings, and spreadsheets still gave her a headache, and half the time she second-guessed whether her staff was agreeing with her or just being polite. But the parts that did come naturally? Listening, noticing, making people feel like they mattered. Those parts flowed like breath. She walked the halls twice a day now, not to clean, but to observe. Room 2010 had a flickering lamp she replaced without asking maintenance. The elevator on the west wing clanged louder than usual, so she scheduled a repair herself. She stocked better soap, swapped the lobby's stale mints for fresh fruit in a bowl, and replaced the out-of-date community flyer wall with a rotating art display made by local kids. The guests noticed. Not all of them, but some. A woman checking out on Friday left a note at the desk. "This place feels like it's waking up again." Connie tucked it into her pocket and didn't tell anyone. That little folded paper felt more valuable than the $5,000 check she still hadn't touched. She still cleaned sometimes, too. It grounded her. On days when her mind was spinning with numbers and emails and board pressure, she'd grab a mop or vacuum and spend 20 minutes making a hallway shine. She liked the rhythm of it, the clarity. And her team noticed that, too. She wasn't above the work. She was inside it. That's what changed everything. But not everyone liked it. Marla hadn't spoken to her directly since the vote, but her presence hovered like a cold draft. Once a week, Connie got a stiff email from the board. Progress, update, requested. She filled it out carefully, attaching photos, costs, upcoming plans. She made sure every number was defensible, every expense explained. Still, she could feel the clock ticking. 12 months to prove this place could survive. Thrive, even. And already a week had passed. Richard dropped by less now. He said he didn't want to interfere. But he called most nights, just to check in. They didn't always talk about the hotel. Sometimes they talked about movies, music, books they didn't have time to finish. He told her about the noise in his head, the pressure that used to feel like it would crush him. She told him about the quiet in hers, the silence that came with being invisible too long. They understood each other in a way that felt rare. But she still kept a distance, because there was too much to lose if she got distracted. One afternoon, Connie sat in room 401, her new office, reviewing invoices, when a knock came at the door. She opened it to find Ms. Ada standing there, apron smudged with bleach and eyes unreadable. "I hear you're hiring," Ada said flatly. Connie blinked. Yes. We're adding 3 part-time positions. I want to recommend someone. My niece. She's 20, got a baby, needs work. She ain't polished, but she's sharp, learns fast, and I trust her." Connie smiled. "That's enough for me. Have her come in tomorrow for an interview." Ada nodded once, then paused. Her voice dropped slightly. "You're doing something here," she said. "I don't know what it is yet, but it feels different." "You're different." Ada's lips twitched. "I'll let you know." She turned and walked away without another word. Later that week, Connie sat through her first finance meeting with a local grant advisor. The woman, Patricia, wore glasses with red frames and took notes like a detective. "This model of yours," Patricia said, flipping a page. "It banks heavily on local partnerships. That's risky." "It's also human," Connie replied. "These partnerships aren't numbers on a page. They're people. The theater troupe down the street? One of the actors stays with us twice a month. The bakery we're bringing in for lobby pastries? Their daughter draws in our waiting area every morning. We're not guessing. We're building." Teresa scribbled something and nodded. "Convince a few more donors, and we'll talk. I like how you talk." Connie left the meeting with her shoulders high and her hands shaking. Everything felt possible and terrifying. That night, she stood alone in the newly cleared room 214. The old wallpaper was gone, the walls bare. She held a brush in one hand and a can of soft olive paint in the other. The scent filled the air, earthy, clean, fresh. She dipped the brush and made the first stroke across the wall. Slow, steady, bold. Each stroke was a decision, each coat a promise. It was past midnight when she stepped back, arms sore, fingers smudged with green, and smiled at the room that now looked like someone cared. She didn't know what the rest of the year would bring, but she knew this. The paint always peels first. But if you're willing to strip it down, scrub it raw, and start again, there's something beautiful underneath waiting to be seen. It happened on a Saturday night, just before closing. The lobby was half-lit, soft jazz playing from the old speakers overhead, and the front desk had gone quiet. Connie stood behind the counter, double-checking the new schedule she'd drafted for the staff. She was proud of it. Everyone got fair hours, 2 new hires were finally trained, and she'd managed to slide in a full weekend off for Miss Ada without anyone complaining. She'd just finished texting Corey a thank you for covering a shift when the lights went out. Flickered. Not dimmed. Out. The music stopped mid-note. The hum of the vending machines in the back hallway died into silence. Even the automatic front doors let out a faint, defeated hiss as they froze in place. Connie stood still, her eyes slowly adjusting to the strange dim. Then came the beeping. Faint, high-pitched alarms from somewhere deep inside the building, the emergency systems kicking in. Seconds later, the backup generator clicked on. It powered only the essentials, the front desk lights, hallway exit signs, and a few overhead bulbs. The hotel fell into a strange, eerie half-dark. Connie grabbed the flashlight under the counter and clicked it on. "Of course," she whispered. "Of course tonight." She stepped from behind the desk and made her way toward the electrical closet in the basement. On her way, a couple came down from the second floor, wide-eyed. "Is everything okay?" the woman asked, holding her phone like it was a lifeline. "We've had a temporary outage," Connie said, steady but calm. "The generator's running. Your room lights are probably out, but the hallways are safe. I'll update everyone as soon as I know more." She waited until they turned back up the stairs before muttering to herself, "And I'll figure that out in the next 10 minutes or die trying." The basement smelled like old cement and damp rust. Connie used the flashlight to guide her steps, each footfall echoing through the long hallway toward the electrical panel. She opened it and stared at the rows of breakers, her gut already knowing the truth. Nothing had tripped. She closed the panel and cursed under her breath. This wasn't internal. She dug out her phone and called Richard. It went to voicemail. Then she called the power company. 22 minutes on hold before she got a live voice. "There's a city grid failure affecting your area," the operator explained. "Estimated resolution is 4 to 6 hours. Connie didn't respond right away. "Ma'am, are you still there?" "Me," she said. "I'm just thinking about how to keep a 100-year-old hotel alive for 6 hours without power." The operator laughed nervously. "We'll do our best." She hung up, climbed the stairs 2 at a time, and returned to the front desk. The text was waiting from Corey. "Just saw the lights go out from down the block. Need me to come in?" She stared at the screen, thumbs hovering. "Not yet. I got it." She pocketed the phone and took a breath. Then she moved. First, she grabbed the emergency candles from the storage closet. 6 boxes they'd only ever touched during fire drills. She lit one in each hallway, placing them inside makeshift lantern jars to keep the flames steady. Then she handed out small battery-powered lamps from the front desk drawer to any guests still lingering in public areas. It was when she got to the kitchen that she realized the real problem. Came the fridge. No power meant cold food wouldn't last long. And the bakery delivery for tomorrow had come early. Pastries, fruit, milk, stuff that would all spoil by sunrise. She stood staring at the open refrigerator, chewing the inside of her cheek before snapping her fingers. 20 minutes later, a long table was set up in the lobby. Candles glowed from the corners. A white tablecloth stretched from one end to the other, and on top of it, every single item from the fridge that wouldn't survive the night. Pastries were stacked neatly beside baskets of fruit. Milk was poured into tiny paper cups with handwritten signs, "Drink me, don't waste me." Even yogurt containers were arranged in a circle like a breakfast buffet in reverse. The guests came slowly at first, peeking out of rooms and following the smell of cinnamon. Then the questions started. Is this for us? Connie smiled. Until the lights come back, this place is a picnic. They laughed, cautiously at first. But something shifted. People started sitting down, talking. One woman pulled out a deck of cards. A man began playing music from his phone on low volume, and no one told him to stop. It felt less like a hotel and more like a gathering. Connie watched it unfold, quiet and amazed. This wasn't in her plan. She hadn't scheduled blackout party on the renovation spreadsheet, but here it was. And it was beautiful. Around midnight, as the last of the candles flickered lower, Richard finally walked through the front doors. He looked around, stunned by the candlelight, the soft hum of voices, and the half-eaten spread across the long table. "You throw this together?" he asked, walking up. "Would you believe me if I said no?" "No," he said, smiling. "Because it feels exactly like you." She handed him a paper cup of room-temperature milk. "Welcome to the Lantern Lounge. No lights, no rules, all heart." He looked at her, something warm behind his eyes. "You didn't panic." "I did," she said. "In the basement. Then I got mad. Then I got creative." He nodded toward the guests laughing in the corner. "You gave them something better than electricity." "I gave them something to remember," she said. "Isn't that the whole point?" They stood there a moment in the half-dark. The generator hummed in the background. And for a second, Connie felt the weight lift, not because the work was done, but because she finally knew she could handle what came next. Even the lights went out again. Because the real glow was coming from her. 3 months passed. The Greymont lantern didn't become a palace. The bricks didn't magically shine, and the elevator still groaned like a tired old man every time someone pressed a button. But something else had changed. Something that started in the walls, then moved into the staff, and then settled into the faces of the guests. The change had Connie's fingerprints on it. Every hallway now had small potted plants and framed black and white photos of the neighborhood's history. Locals who used to walk past without a glance now came inside to read old newspaper clippings on the community board, or grab a coffee from the lobby bar, or bring their kids to the free Saturday story hour Connie had started with the help of Ms. Ada's niece. The Saturday event was her favorite. It wasn't just the kids, though they were loud and brilliant and funny. It was the way their parents watched with something like relief. Like for the first time in a while, someone saw them too. Connie greeted every one of them by name. She learned who needed job referrals, who baked on the side, who'd lost someone recently and didn't know how to say it. She didn't fix everything, but she made space for it to be seen. And somehow that was more powerful. On a warm Thursday afternoon, while Connie was checking the inventory of paint samples for the next round of room updates, a delivery guy knocked on the front desk. "You, Connie?" She looked up from her clipboard. "Yeah?" "That's me. Got something for you. Needs a signature." He handed her a clipboard and then passed her a sealed envelope with a gold-embossed label on the front. Travers Group Holdings. Her heart stuttered. The final documents. She thanked him quietly and walked up to room 401 without opening it. Her hands shook a little as she sat at her desk and broke the seal. Inside were 2 sheets. The first was an official transfer of operational ownership, signed by the board. Her name printed in crisp black ink, Connie Spencer, General Manager and Community Partner. The second was a short letter. Just 2 sentences. "Connie, you earned this. Don't forget who you're building it for." She read it twice, then folded both pages carefully and slid them into the drawer where she kept a grandmother's scarf and her sister's nursing school acceptance letter. That night she stayed late. Not working, not managing, just walking. She moved from floor to floor, flipping on lights, checking corners, making sure everything still felt like hers. The hotel wasn't perfect. A light bulb flickered in the hallway. The stairs still creaked. One of the front doors stuck, unless you leaned on it a certain way. But it was alive, and it was hers. As she passed room 214, she stopped. The paint she'd rolled on herself still looked fresh. A couple from Detroit had just checked in earlier that day, and they'd left a note at the front desk. Never expected to feel this kind of peace in a hotel. Thank you. She didn't cry. She just smiled, hand resting lightly on the doorknob before she kept walking. Downstairs, Corey was manning the front desk, humming under his breath. "Hey," he said when he saw her. "You got the papers?" She nodded. "It's official." He grinned. "I told Miss Ada you were going to run this place one day. She said she'd believe it when she saw your name on the wall." Connie chuckled. "Then I guess we should give her a reason." He leaned over and reached under the desk. When he came back up, he was holding a small brass nameplate. He set it on the counter like a trophy. She stared at it. "Connie Spencer, hotel manager. You made this?" He shrugged. "You earned it. Seemed like the lobby needed to know." She picked it up, running her fingers across the smooth engraved letters. It felt surreal, heavy in her hands, but in the best way. "Thanks, Corey," she said, her voice soft. "For what?" "For staying," she replied. He smiled. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She recalls. She spent the weekend putting together a staff appreciation event. Nothing fancy, just a small party in the lounge with music, finger foods, and handwritten cards for everyone on payroll. She made sure every person felt seen. Every job, no matter how small, was acknowledged. By the time Monday rolled around, even the air inside the lantern felt warmer. On Tuesday morning, Richard walked in. She didn't expect him. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire today. Jeans, old jacket, scuffed shoes. He looked like someone who'd come home after a long trip and wanted to know if his room was still there. "Got a minute?" he asked. "For you? Always." They walked together through the lobby, past the fireplace she'd insisted on cleaning even though no one used it, into the back garden she'd started replanting with donated herbs and climbing roses. He looked around and smiled. "You've changed it." "No," she said. "I let it remember what it was." He nodded. "The board's not breathing down your neck anymore?" "They're watching, but they're quiet." "Good. Quiet is good." They stood there in silence for a minute. Then he looked at her, almost shy. "You ever think about what's next?" She raised an eyebrow. "Next like tomorrow's breakfast menu, or next like my 5-year plan?" He laughed. "I was thinking 5 years." She thought for a moment, then answered honestly. "I want to own it, not just run it, all of it." He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. "I think that can happen," he said. "When it does, let me be your first investor." She smiled. "Maybe," she said, "if you're lucky." They walked back inside together. That afternoon, Connie stood in front of the hotel's new front sign, just installed, bright against the sunlit brick. It still said Greymont Lantern, but beneath it, etched smaller, "Managed with heart. See." Guests passed by, some nodding in thanks, others too caught up in their own travels to notice. Kids pointed at the gold lettering. An elderly couple snapped a photo of the flower boxes she'd planted just last week. The world outside the hotel was still hard. Rent still came due. Injustice still lived outside the door. But inside, something better bloomed. Connie stood there, letting it all settle in her bones. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was the name on the door. She was the reason the lights stayed on. In the future, it finally felt like hers.